On March 27, 1994, two canoeists paddling in the Oconee River spotted something half submerged in the water. It was just before 4 p.m. near the Forest Heights subdivision, and heavy rainfall that spring had caused much of the river to flood, dredging up objects from the depths. The canoeists paddled closer to get a better look and realized that what they saw tangled between floating tree limbs were human limbs. It was a body so badly decomposed that they couldn't make out any identifying features except for two weights that appeared to have been tied to the body in order to weigh it down under the water. Marietta police were able to identify from the clothing and a high school ring that this was a young woman who had been reported missing 6 weeks earlier, 19-year-old college student Claudette Ficik. Claudette was an environmental development major at Southern Tech, and she had been reported missing by her parents after she promised to make a 5-hour drive to visit them in South Carolina, but never showed up. Less than 3 weeks before Claudette's body was found, another body had also surfaced in the Oconee River, and two other female college students had recently disappeared from the area as well. Everyone wondered if they were all connected, and if Georgia had a serial killer on the loose. In this video, we'll talk about the Claudette Ficik case, a murder investigation with multiple suspects, failed polygraphs, and the shocking revelation that the real killer was the one who actually passed the polygraph when we go behind the headlines. On June 16, 1974, Claudette Jennifer Ficik was born in Middlesex County, New Jersey, to parents Mary and Craig Ficik. Growing up with brothers Chad and Craig Jr., Claudette, who was nicknamed Baby Cakes, was known for being independent, kind-hearted, and an avid animal lover. She loved competing in majorettes and was sociable and popular. In high school, Claudette had a serious boyfriend named Michael, who was very close to her family. The Ficiks were close to Michael and were known not only for being a close-knit family themselves, but also for welcoming others and treating them like family as well. Claudette's family moved from New Jersey to Georgia when she was a teenager, and during the summer of 1992, after Claudette graduated from Sequoia High School in Canton, her parents decided to move to South Carolina. Claudette stayed behind in Georgia to attend Southern Tech in Cobb County, and before long, the beautiful brunette with a thick Jersey accent was turning heads around campus. While studying toward her career goal of becoming an architect, Claudette worked part-time as head cashier at PetSmart, which she chose because of her love of animals. Claudette owned a white Persian cat named Sam, which she doted on, and would even take for walks on a leash. Shortly after she started working at the pet store, one of Claudette's co-workers, Chris, asked her out on a date. Since Claudette had amicably broken up with her high school boyfriend, Michael, she accepted. Chris took Claudette to dinner at a chain restaurant, which she would later joke was the reason she decided not to pursue a romantic relationship with Chris, and why he was ultimately friend-zoned instead. Another co-worker at the pet store, Mike, an ex-military man, also tried to pursue Claudette, and when he asked her out on a date, she accepted. They went to the county fair, but it wasn't a match because the feeling wasn't mutual. Claudette got a bad feeling about Mike and told people she found him creepy, so she didn't pursue it further. The person who really caught Claudette's eye was her manager at the pet store, Jason Raglan. Although Jason had a long-distance girlfriend named Anne, PetSmart employees noticed that he still flirted with Claudette during working hours. Eventually, Claudette and Jason started having an on-again, off-again affair, which his long-distance girlfriend soon became suspicious of when she'd call Jason and Claudette would answer the phone before handing it over. When Anne inquired about the mysterious woman, Jason didn't tell her about Claudette and how they had met at the pet store. Instead, he would shrug it off and tell her that Claudette was just a friend from work. While Claudette was caught in a love triangle with Jason and his long-distance girlfriend, one of her Southern Tech classmates, John, had gotten to know Claudette and had secretly been pining for her. John was socially awkward and not too shy to make his feelings known at the beginning of the semester, but the day before Valentine's Day 1994, John decided he had had enough of sitting on the fence about his feelings for Claudette, and after taking her to TGI Fridays and the mall, he presented her with a Valentine card and a rose. Claudette was flattered, and although she valued her friendship with John, she wasn't interested in pursuing a relationship with him. Things had become serious between Claudette and her manager Jason, and despite the fact that they were keeping it a secret from his girlfriend Anne, Claudette had plans to bring Jason to South Carolina in just a few days to meet her parents. Claudette had told her parents, Mary and Craig, to expect her on February 16, 1994, but she never made the 5-hour drive from Georgia. The next day, on February 17th, Claudette's parents filed a missing persons report. Claudette was close to her parents growing up, and as the only girl in the family, was always a daddy's girl. And even though she was living in a different state from her parents now, they still talked to her every day, so they knew immediately something was wrong when she just went off the grid. Police searched Claudette's apartment and found no sign of struggle and no sign of her gray Chevy pickup truck. Marietta police decided to pay a visit to the pet store and question Jason, her manager and main love interest. Jason told police that he and Claudette had planned for him to go with her on the 16th to meet her parents in South Carolina, but he said he had gotten sick, so Claudette decided to leave without him. He said she was angry with him for not going, and when she stormed out of his apartment, it was the last time he had seen her. Now, Claudette's friends had informed police that Jason had a pattern of promising to go see Claudette's parents and meet them in South Carolina, but that he would back out at the last minute at least 4 or 5 times in the past, using the excuse that he had work. Georgia cops questioned Claudette's Southern Tech campus classmates, professors, and canvassed her apartment building for any information on her whereabouts. Meanwhile, Jason and other PetSmart employees were handing out missing flyers all over the state. Within a few days of her parents reporting Claudette missing, her pickup truck was located in the parking lot of a low-income housing complex in downtown Atlanta, with the keys still in the ignition. Investigators had received a tip that Claudette was spotted in this same area after she was reported missing and allegedly prostituting, but that tip turned out to be a case of mistaken identity. The driver's seat of Claudette's truck was usually adjusted all the way forward to accommodate her tiny 5'2", 90-pound frame, but this time, it was pushed all the way back as far as it could go. And one clue that really caught the eye of cops among Claudette's belongings was the Valentine from her art class friend and rejected suitor, John. Cops questioned the Southern Tech student, who told them that he had taken Claudette to TGI Fridays and the mall on the day before Valentine's Day, and that the last time he had seen her was on the 16th, the day she went missing. John told police that he walked Claudette to the parking lot after class shortly after noon, and when he waved goodbye and walked her to her car, that was the last time that he had seen her. John informed police that she was wearing blue jeans at the time as well as Reebok tennis shoes, and then he recalled a random detail, that her ear had been infected. When John was asked to take a polygraph, he agreed, but when the polygraph administrator asked him, "Did you do anything to harm Claudette Ficik?" his answer, no, was flagged for indicating deception. John had failed the polygraph, unlike Jason Ragland, who was questioned again in early March and passed the lie detector test with flying colors. Now, it was March 27th and everyone's worst fear had been confirmed. Claudette was dead and had somehow ended up in the Oconee River. When the autopsy results came back, they indicated that the cause of death had been strangulation. But there was an even bigger bombshell revealed from the autopsy, that Claudette had been 4 months pregnant at the time of her murder. While this was news to investigators and family, Claudette's best friend later told police that they were aware Claudette had been pregnant with Jason's child, but they hadn't disclosed this information when questioned by police because they were trying to honor Claudette's wishes to keep it a secret. Claudette had found out about her pregnancy just before Christmas, and friends said she was initially unsure about what she was going to do. Eventually, Claudette and Jason had decided they would get married and raise the baby together. The lease on Claudette's apartment was up soon, so the couple planned to move into Jason's apartment and raise the baby while Claudette would attend school part-time. Close friends admitted to police that even though they weren't a fan of Jason, they didn't have any particular reason to believe that he could have been Claudette's killer. They told police that Claudette thought Jason was cute and sweet, but they thought it was odd that Jason was never seen out and about with Claudette. Jason seemed to be keeping her a secret rather than going public and making their relationship official. Other groups of students from Southern Tech would often go out on weekends to mid-90s hangouts like Krispy Kreme or Zoo Atlanta, but Claudette was always solo on group dates with her friends. And since Claudette had learned she was pregnant with Jason's baby, she had been taking her upcoming move with Jason very seriously and planning out all the logistics. She was even concerned that her white Persian cat Sam wouldn't get along with Jason's cat. In addition to Jason, her manager, and John, her classmate, police also questioned Claudette's one-time date with coworker Chris, who had taken her out to a chain restaurant and was promptly friend-zoned. Police probed for any signs that Chris might have been jealous of Claudette choosing Jason over him, but they found no indication that Chris and Claudette wanted to be anything more than just good friends. Police even learned that Chris had previously met Claudette's parents on a trip to South Carolina, although he had been introduced to them as just a friend. Back at the pet store, police also questioned Military Mike, the co-worker who had taken Claudette to the county fair but ultimately gave her a bad feeling. During the pet store interviews, police got additional intel on Military Mike from another employee who had also gone out on a date with him. and the information was filled with red flags. The young woman confided in cops that Mike seemed suspicious on their date because he casually mentioned that a certain remote area would be a great place to dump a body, and that he also talked about guns on the date. While investigators connected the dots out in the field, forensics were back in the lab, hard at work analyzing the evidence that had been used to weigh down Claudette's body in the Oconee River. The weights included a mushroom-shaped boat anchor attached to the body with a bike lock, an angle iron, and a nylon rope. Investigators were able to identify angle iron as the same type used on a construction site beside the pet store, and although they weren't making their findings public, papers had reported that they were also able to connect the bike lock and anchor back to Jason Ragland. Even though he had passed the polygraph with flying colors, investigators decided to circle back to Jason and find out more about his background. Investigators decided to talk to Anne, Jason's long-distance girlfriend, to find out what had been going on behind the scenes of their love triangle with Claudette. Anne told them she had first met Jason in 1988 at the University of Georgia, and that they were friends for about 3 years before they decided to become boyfriend and girlfriend in June of 1991. Jason had graduated with honors and a finance degree from the University of Georgia in 1992, and then gone to work at the pet store. Anne also disclosed that Jason didn't smoke or do drugs, and that his parents had split up. She mentioned that Jason's father, who lived on Lake Dow in McDonough, Georgia, owned a pontoon boat with a broken motor, and said that Jason and his dad had a close relationship and even biked across Georgia together in the summer of '91. Jason and his father also fished together at Lake Dow, although lately, Anne had noticed that they seemed to be butting heads. Police learned that Jason also had a close relationship with his mom and had traveled with her for 3 weeks to Europe in the summer of 1992. The trip had been a graduation present to Jason from his mom. Anne also disclosed to the police that Jason had been at her apartment recently watching coverage of Claudette's disappearance on the news, and when she'd asked what he was watching, he replied, "Oh, nothing." Anne told police that she recognized Claudette's name from the pet store training materials that Jason had around his apartment, and when she put the pieces together, she realized this was the same girl discovered in the Oconee River. Anne said she confronted Jason about keeping Claudette a secret from her, and he told her he didn't want her to get mad. Anne also told police that when Claudette's body was found, Jason had remarked in a quiet voice, "At least they found her body. It makes me sick." Investigators then dropped the bombshell on Anne that Claudette had been pregnant with Jason's child. Anne stated that she didn't know that information, but she had sensed something was wrong. Police also learned that Jason and Anne had spent Valentine's Day together, and Anne hadn't noticed Jason being sick as he had claimed to have been. Anne had then moved to the Atlanta area just 2 days after Claudette went missing. Another interesting detail Anne told police was that in the fall of 1993, she and Jason were in his stepfather's boat on Lake Hardwick when they lost the boat's anchor. Jason then bought another anchor with a yellow cord like the one found tied to Claudette's body. Police conducted a search of Jason's apartment, including a luminol test of his living room carpet fibers. After the luminol lit up a giant bloodstain the size and shape of Claudette's body, Jason was arrested at his father's house for the murder of Claudette Ficik. On April 12th, the day after Jason's arrest, he was questioned again by investigators. This time, they confronted him with a photo of the 4-month-old fetus Claudette had been carrying to try and provoke a confession. Instead, Jason blurted out, "I didn't strangle," before pulling back and rephrasing his claim of innocence to "I didn't kill her." The slip of the tongue indicated to law enforcement that Jason was aware that the manner of Claudette's death had been strangulation, a detail from the autopsy that hadn't been disclosed to the public. He had corrected himself mid-sentence in an effort to obscure the information he possessed, information he could have only known if he had been present when she was killed. While Jason sat in jail and his attorney prepared his defense, he passed the time by watching the Braves on TV and helping other inmates prepare their pre-trial paperwork. In a local newspaper interview, his mother told newspapers Jason would pick up a spider and put it outside, much less harm a precious person he cared for. Jason is a kind, loving, and compassionate person and couldn't hurt a flea. Jason's ex-girlfriend, on the other hand, described his nature quite differently at the bond hearing. She testified that when she was sleeping with Jason, he had started dating Anne and wanted to keep that love triangle a secret as well. She testified that Jason threatened her, "If you tell Anne or anyone about what happened, I'll kill you and I'll kill myself and I'll kill her. But I will make sure I kill you." Now, Jason's polygraph test results, which indicated he was not lying to investigators when he said he didn't know where Claudette was or if she was injured, were ultimately not admissible in court, nor were the failed polygraph results from Claudette's friend from art class. This was bad for Jason's defense case, and now he faced the real possibility of death by electric chair. The trial was scheduled to begin on Monday, August 26, 1996, and on August 23, 1996, 23-year-old Jason Ragland made the decision to plead guilty to the murder of 19-year-old Claudette Ficik. His last-minute guilty plea in Athens Clark Superior Court was speculated to be a move to avoid the death penalty. As he spoke to the court in front of Claudette's parents, they bowed their heads. Jason Ragland was sentenced to life in prison for the murder of Claudette Ficik. In 2008, he was profiled in a glowing article in the Atlanta Times about enrichment activities for inmates and how he was studying Greek. The article described him as college educated and praised him for sharing his flair with language to teach Greek to other inmates. Jason Ragland is currently serving his life sentence at the Burrs Correctional Training Center in Monroe County. He's had several parole hearings over the years, most recently in September of 2024. And each time he is up for parole, Claudette's family and friends are notified by the court and forced to relive the pain of her murder all over again. Claudette's brother Craig, who is a scoutmaster, and his family recently paid a visit to Special Agent Mays at GBI headquarters. Special Agent Fred Mays, who investigated Claudette's case, has remained close with the Ficik family, 30 years after her death. Claudette is remembered by those who loved her as joyful and kind, and a scholarship in her name at Edgefield County School District helps to keep her memory alive. This has been Joshua John with Behind the Headlines, and until next time, stay safe.